what about the Nazis? Ukraine has Nazis, right? Isn't this a denazification exercise? Once again, debunked. But, okay, here's the thing. We have to begin with a few caveats. There has been some research lately from a very excellent, I'm not sure whether they're an organization. They have a very good Substack, but they're called Novel Science. They've gone in, they've looked into the information and disinformation, and quite a few other people have done this. The journalism organization Bellingcat has also been looking into this quite a lot since 2014. So the essentials you need to know is that, of course, there are ultranationalists in Ukraine's army. There are ultranationalists in every army. How do you get rid of Ukraine's Nazi problem? You get rid of all armies. Apart from that, the president of Ukraine, whom Russia keeps calling an anti-Semite, is Jewish. So what about that grain of truth? Why does everyone keep talking about this Azov battalion and, this division of Nazis in the Ukraine army? Well, in 2014, Russia invaded Crimea. They quickly took it, and Ukraine began quickly deputizing everyone who was willing to fight. Now, one militia was called the Azov Battalion. They were made up of what most of us in the English-speaking world would call soccer hooligans. They were just outrageous people who were actually quite good at fighting. A lot of them were ex-military. And this is the part of Eastern Europe where you get kind of Cossacks and those Eurasian steppes where people have always fought and pain has always been a big part of the culture. And Winston Churchill used to say about Stalin, I'll make a deal with the devil if the devil helps me fight Nazis. And I suppose it's ironic that I use this as an example of what Ukraine was thinking when they took this unit of hooligans who did use combined runes, and it's hard to say what their intentions were when they started using Nazi imagery, when a few of them got black sun tattoos, and eventually the Azov battalion actually got their hands on an army tank and they actually painted it in these combined runes, such as the Germans used in the 30s and 40s in their army. In any case, the Azov battalion was deputized not into the army, but a small part of the National Guard on the Azov Sea, since they liked that place so much, around a town called Mariupol. As this battalion became more and more legitimate, and as they became called not a battalion but the Azov Division, they began receiving normal people into their ranks, and that ultranationalism, that hooliganism, in fact that edgy young teenage neo-Nazism that you see on the internet sometimes, began to fade away, and they became a normal group with a shady history. Most recently, you've actually seen these guys in the news being hailed as heroes. It's a very weird thing, and it just shows you how ambiguous and strange and multi-layered stories become in war. These were the guys who hold themselves up in the Azov Steelworks, the Azovstal Steelworks to use its actual name, and held off Russian invasion for a very long time. The media absolutely gushed over these guys, despite their history, and the history was glossed over, which has, well, frankly, it gave Russia a very good initiative for their propaganda. The lesson here, I suppose, is that it's good to call out a dark past and remind people that, this person has changed, this person has gotten better. When you bury it and don't talk about it, it sure looks like that dark past is still there. The problem in this case is that that dark past appears to be gone, and that's why we need to talk about it. So what tricks are we seeing here exactly? Well, one would be the, as Stalin put it, the one death is a tragedy, 1 million is a statistic. You will see a lot of propaganda where the combatants try to justify their position and prove the truth of what they are doing with one person's story. This one person was treated badly by Ukrainians, therefore the invasion is justified. Or, this one person is surrendering to Russia, therefore the entire Russian army is crumbling. And in fact, this was the other version of that we are beating back Ukraine and they are losing propaganda that's being dished out. Where Twitter was heavy with the Russian invasion, It was actually Reddit that repeated over and over again this idea that because we have a video of one Russian surrendering, the entire army is going down. And you will notice this again because all those reports have the exact same wording. You need to remember here, both countries' media are on a war footing. Truth is the first casualty. They are now turning around information and its systems from here's what you need to know to here's what will win us the war. And in Russia particularly, where it's the home of the Soviet Union, so social cohesion is the important thing. You know, keeping the clan happy, keeping everyone content and looking after each other, or at least maintaining an image of that. They actually will choose news that has a utility to keep people behaving and keep society moving forward over the actual truth. We're not really used to this in the Western world, which is why when we get a reminder of it, we tend to treat it as a new thing and give it its own name. Most recently, we've been calling this Trumpism, which is a strategy where you convince the populace that the entire media is lying to you, the entire government is lying to you, and none of them have your best interests at heart. Therefore, vote for the guy or watch the news that lies for you. And this is the Russian propaganda strategy in a nutshell when they're giving people news. Basically, you know, well, it's all kind of a lie anyway, so here's what will get me through if I believe this. In the English-speaking world, we tend to have a lot of trouble understanding and empathizing with people who have been invaded for their entire history, because so many of us are in the New World, so many of us are on islands, and so we don't really have a zeitgeist where we are suspicious of our neighbors.
No, a fairy, you know, the stupid magic entity who fills your wishes, comes to a Slovene farmer and asks him, I will do whatever you want to you, just remember, I will do to your neighbor twice as much. No? You know what is Slovene farmer's answer? Take one of my eyes. Because then...
So you have to understand that the values of this region are much more multi-layered than the mainstream West, where we say freedom, truth, that's all we're into. These people are also into surviving, and there have been vast periods, especially in living memory, where they actually have had to say what's right to keep themselves surviving. You know, there's this pragmatism, there's this element of picking your battles that so many of us locked away in safe countries that don't remember invasion have never experienced, and hopefully will never have to experience. It's looking an awful lot that way, actually, because we're tucked away in these enclaves, in these islands, in these nations of, in the United States case, more than 300 million that takes up like the middle part of an entire continent. We just don't get it. And that's why we have to be really careful when we receive news from this region, because you have to understand that it's mixed in with a lot more cultural norms. But as well as that, you're reading this using cultural norms that you're used to. So you really have to keep an open mind and remember that you're not necessarily there. For this reason, the most reliable news right now is actually the mainstream news. Look to, for example, those big government sources like the BBC, the ABC in Australia. In the US, there's NPR. See, because there's a media blackout, the Battle of Kherson, if it's won or lost, those facts will come at you all at once. And this will happen for much of the war. When you find out, everyone will find out. And if you try and seek information on the fringe, if you keep hitting that F5 button, if you keep scrolling down on your phone like a poker machine, you're going to run into fake news. And you're going to run into, well, partly legitimate news. And that's the really pernicious thing. You need to keep an open mind, but also we need to know where our facts come from and always keep in mind this is benefiting someone. Is that someone the public? Or is that someone an army?